Okay, here we are with the last chapter in this fourth module, conflict and negotiation. Excuse me. So, like politics, conflict is inevitable when you get one or more people together. Sometimes you just need one person for conflict. But conflict is any situation that there's incompatible goals, attitudes, emotions, behaviors, and there's some level of disagreement between two or more parties. We also talk about individual conflict too, in conflict within ourselves. So your ability to manage conflict can predict how well you will be as a manager. And emotional intelligence, again, the ability to recognize um, uh, the emotions of yourself and others, plays a big role in dealing with conflict. We've talked about emotional intelligence over and over and over again, and oops, here it is, yet again. So power to control your own emotions, perceive emotions in others, adapt to change, and manage adversity. Emotional intelligence. It really is a really important concept. Okay, so there are positive and negative consequences of conflict. It can lead to new ideas. It can, uh, motivate change. All these things. So conflict can be very positive. It can also be very negative in terms of wasting time and resources, and it diverts energy from things that should be going on. It breaks down group cohesion. It can increase aggressive or hostile behaviors. Its negative consequences really can be detrimental to an organization or any relationship. Okay, so there's functional conflict that leads to something better, and dysfunctional that leads to some sort of destruction between two people of a relationship or negatively impacting the workplace. Okay, so there are structural factors and personal factors that are going to cause conflict. And you can read through those. If people are looking for different things, we talked about scarcity of resources. If people are trying to get more things out of the same pot.
If you just said something, I didn't hear what it was.
Sorry, that was my phone. I don't know how that happened. I apologize. Anyway, so causes of conflict within within people themselves. Maybe you don't feel like you have the skills or ability. People's personalities, people's perceptions of things. We all see things, we all perceive things differently based on a social learning and direct experience. What our values are. People have different, even though we live in the same culture, people have different values and ethics. Sometimes our emotions get the best of us. Communication barriers can cause conflict, even though we don't, misinterpreting what people are saying. And then again, cultural differences. Okay, so in organizations, there's interorganizational conflict, intergroup conflict, and intragroup conflict. So interorganizational conflict is between two or more organizations, so company A and company B. Intergroup conflict is between groups or teams in an organization, so the marketing team versus the finance team, or the human resources team versus the finance team. I'm not picking on finance, but I'm just coming up with that right now. It could also be, the people who are, in two different satellite offices, that kind of thing. And then intergroup conflict is conflict within the teams of the group. So two people in the marketing group might have a conflict that would be intragroup. So intra. If you, the one way to always remember the difference between inter and intra is if you think about intercollegiate sports and intramural sports. Intercollegiate sports are between two different schools. Intramural sports are between teams within the same school. Okay, so types of conflict, interpersonal conflict, that's conflict within yourself. Interrole conflict, so you have multiple roles in your life. You're a wife, you're a mother, you're an attorney, you're a Girl Scout leader, whatever. Intra-role conflict is when within your role, say as a manager, you're being told to do two different things. Keep the employee census the same but save money. And then person role conflict is when you are expected to do things that conflict with how you feel. So perhaps you have an ethical objection to something that you have to do. Perhaps you know don't you are asked to let people go, but you don't believe in that because you know that there's other ways to save money. Okay, how to resolve or address intrapersonal conflict. So when we talk about, again, interpersonal conflict is conflict within yourself. So find out as much as you can about the organization. Ask what the expectations are going to be in your role, and employ your political skills. See if you can negotiate what the expectations are going to be when the conflict results. So really, managing yourself by gathering as much information and also understanding where you're coming from. Okay, interpersonal conflict. So that's between you and other people. Understand the power networks within the organization to know, who you need to navigate, who you need to align yourself with to get what you need done. Recognize defense mechanisms. We're going to talk about defense mechanisms in a little while in this chapter, and then figure out ways to deal with other people, deal with difficult people. So maybe one way is to just ignore them, or maybe one way is to give them facts, or maybe, one way is to, just, try to be, rational persuasion, all those things. These are things that we've talked about in other chapters. I hope that one thing that you're seeing in this class is that all of these things sort of intertwine and interweave with each other. We've been talking about personality quite a bit. We've been talking about perception quite a bit. We were talking about managing, political skill, all these kinds of things. All of this stuff, all of these concepts lay over each other and twist and turn and are involved. I always talk about the big board. I want to have a big board of organizational terms and connect it, how they're all connected in multiple ways. Okay, so let's talk about some defense mechanisms. There are essentially 3 different categories of defense mechanisms: aggressive, compromise, and withdrawal. So in each one, there's 3 different ones. So first, we're going to talk about aggressive defense mechanisms when there's some kind of conflict. This is what do people do when there's some kind of conflict. And we're animals. We tend to focus on we respond to we try to defend ourselves, and just as animals in the wild defend themselves, human beings try to defend themselves. So some aggressive methods are this idea of fixation, which keeping up some sort of dysfunctional behavior, constantly complaining, or constantly withholding information. That's not going to solve the conflict. Displacement, being mad at one person but yelling at another person. I think everyone's seen that in their lives. And negativism is that anytime someone wants to solve a problem, they just come up with 1,001 reasons why it shouldn't be done that way. Constantly, their glass is half empty and it can't be refilled. Negative, negative, negative. Okay, compromise is a little bit better, but maybe not always so much. They try to make up for some sort of negative situation by devoting themselves to something else with increased vigor. So maybe they're really late with getting a proposal in, but instead what they're doing is focusing on the proposal that isn't due for another couple of weeks, so that they at least feel like they're doing something. They're compensating from one activity for another. They sometimes you'll pattern your behavior, or model behavior. You use other people as model behavior. So someone else has been very effective at say ingratiation. Then your boss is good at ingratiation, so you start to do that too. Rationalization is, we talked about attribution theory in previous chapters. It's basically justifying your own behavior by coming up with some kind of crazy reason or false reason. That's rationalization. Okay, and then finally, withdrawal. Flight withdrawal, actually like physically leaving or psychologically escaping from a conflict. We talked about fight or flight, or when we were talking about the stress in the stress chapter. So it's actually like removing yourself from the situation, either physically or just not thinking about it. Um, Conversion, again, this kind of goes back to the whole idea of some of the ideas we talked about in the stress chapter, that physical manifesting itself, emotional conflicts are manifesting itself in physical symptoms. It could be a tic, it could be heavy breathing, it could be, um, fast heart rate, that kind of thing. And then fantasy is just daydreaming. Oh, I don't want to work on this project because I don't believe in it, and so I'm just going to start to think about, how this project can go away or how this client can disappear or something like that. Okay, so there are a lot of ineffective techniques for dealing with conflict. One of them is non-action, or simply just not doing anything at all. Character assassination, blaming someone else. Well, they're such a pain in the neck, so, they never did their work, so why should I do my work? Assassinating someone else's character, criticizing someone else. Secrecy, not sharing information. Due process non-action is making the ability to resolve the conflict just so complicated and convoluted that it's not even, and time-consuming and costly, that it's just not worth it to try to fix it. And then administrative orbiting is delaying action on a conflict by buying time. Usually by telling someone that that's being worked on, or they're still thinking about it, putting people off. Administrative orbiting is putting people off, essentially. Okay, so effective techniques for dealing with conflict: superordinate goals, coming up with a goal that's greater than ourselves. So, one example of that is, the someone asking a floor sweeper at NASA, what are you doing? And, well, of course they're sweeping a floor, but really what the response is, we're trying to get a man on the moon. So that's a superordinate goal, a goal that's bigger than all of us, that we can all get behind. Confronting and negotiating, just putting it out on the table and talking about it. Sometimes changing the structure will do it, having changing reporting systems, or, how the organization is configured. Expanding resources is giving people more money or more opportunity to, more resources, more money, more time, more people on it. That could help deal with the conflict, or giving them more leeway to make more authority to make changes. And then finally, changing personnel. Sometimes it can just be simply changing people who are in the jobs and changing the quote-unquote cast, like the cast in a play or a movie. Okay. Sorry about that. Negotiation. Joint process of finding a mutually acceptable solution to a complex conflict. So basically, the two parties working together to come up with a solution that's going to keep both of them happy and fulfill their needs, and also help fulfill the organization's goals. So there's essentially two different approaches. One is distributive bargaining, which is try to maximize the resources that they have, try to maximize what's going on, or integrative negotiation is sort of blending everything together, looking at both sides to try to achieve their objectives. Okay, conflict management styles. We're going to look through these, but hang on, I'll expand this for you. It's straight from the book. So there's essentially, on one side, assertiveness, on the other side, cooperativeness, and there are 5 different styles: competing, collaborating, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. And we will go through and look at those one by one. Okay, avoiding, someone who's avoiding, so let's go back here for a second. On the one side is assertiveness, and on the other side is cooperativeness. Okay, so avoiding which is up in the, it's in the bottom right-hand corner. So it's someone who's unassertive and uncooperative is they make a deliberate decision to not take any action on the conflict or stay out of the conflict. Accommodating is someone who is highly cooperative, but not necessarily assertive. They just, they're not really very concerned with getting their own way. Competing is someone who is highly assertive, but highly assertive and generally uncooperative. They're mostly just interested in getting their own way. Someone who's compromising is really right in the middle. They realize that each party needs to give something up. And then collaborating is someone who's cooperative and assertive, and they are interested in arriving at a solution that's agreeable to everybody, and they want to have open discussion on it. Okay, so conflict management styles. You want to look at that in terms of, we're going to go through them. The 5 of them are listed: avoiding, accommodating, competing, collaborating, and compromising. So, how to handle those situations? What's the best thing to do in those situations? So the conflict handling style is on the right hand column, and the appropriate situation is on the left hand column. And you can go through those and look at them. That this is not always a one size fits all thing. And again, this is also in the book. It's table 13.3 in the book. Okay, so that's it for this chapter in this 4th module. Kind of a quick run through conflict and negotiation, a skills that you can use not only in the workplace but in your personal life as well. If you have children, certainly you could use some of these tactics and recognize some of them, or in other situations as well. Okay, thanks everyone.